Good day. I am Christian Vicedo of the University of the Philippines, Diliman. I am a graduate student, and as part of my academic requirement, I will be delivering an online lecture on the Quad, China, and the rules-based maritime order. What is the Quad? It is an informal security dialogue platform between and among the United States, India, Japan, and Australia. First convened in 2007, the Quad was believed to be a collective response to China's growing economic and military power. However, following leadership changes in Japan and Australia, the Quad became dormant. It was, however, reconvened in 2017 at the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit in Manila. Currently, the Quad operates in a different context, characterized by the possibility of a great power transition given a rising and more assertive China. Hence, the Quad countries have agreed to preserve and promote the status quo of a free and open Indo-Pacific region. The free and open Indo-Pacific concept encapsulates the desire of the Quad to preserve a rules-based maritime order. This order is a system of regimes on the freedom of the seas, including the freedom of navigation and overflight. It is also about the redistribution of ocean commons based on international law, such as those pertaining to maritime zones, including UNCLOS. This maritime order is currently under challenge by China's nine-dashed line claim, its military facilities, and gray zone coercion activities in the South China Sea. Given this challenge in preserving a free and open Indo-Pacific, it is essential to ask, how viable is the Quad as a balancing force to preserve the rules-based maritime order in the Indo-Pacific? In answering this main problem, we also need to ask the following questions. How aligned are the interests of the Quad countries? How inclined are they in balancing China? And how effective is the Quad as a deterrent force against China's challenge to the rules-based maritime order? Our analysis will be guided by three theories. We will use power transition theory to check if there is indeed an alignment of interests among the Quad members. Then we use balance of threat theory to check if the Quad countries have common threat perceptions of China. Finally, we use deterrence theory to check if the Quad is effective enough to deter China. Let us first discuss the interests of individual countries before discussing their shared interests. According to Wakar-Un 2019, the interests of US as a dominant status quo power are as follows. Guarantee freedom of navigation and overflight, control sea lines of communications or SLOCs, prevent any rival power from increasing influence in the region. According to HAFA 2018, Japan's interest is the promotion of the rule of law and freedom from coercion in the region. For Tokuchi 2020, this includes the promotion of a rules-based international order and securing India's presence in the Indian Ocean to counter China. According to Kliem 2020, Australia wants to promote an open, inclusive, and prosperous region. On the other hand, for Gabriel, Madelbaum, and Carvalho, Australia wants to manage geopolitical competition that can hinder its economic engagements. Finally, according to Tokuchi 2020, India understands the economic connectivity between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Hence, it seeks to promote security in the Indian Ocean and stability in Southeast Asia. For Brewster 2020, India's naval expansion was motivated by China's string of pearls strategy, which can encircle India. The joint statement entitled Spirit of the Quad outlines the collective interests of the Quad countries. They seek to promote a free, open, and rules-based international order. They also seek to promote freedom of navigation and overflight and respect for territorial integrity. Now that we have discussed the Quad's shared interests, let us check if they have the aggregate power to balance China. As can be seen on this slide, in terms of economic power measured in current GDP purchasing power parity in millions of US dollars, China has already overtaken the US in 2019. We see the economic gap between China and the other three countries in this slide, which is crucial since it means that economic relations with China will be important for them within a developing Indo-Pacific region. In terms of military power measured by military spending in millions of current US dollars, we can see that while the US remains to be the largest military spender, China was able to quadruple its military spending from 2007 to 2020. China's military budget is even larger compared to that of the combined budget of the other three members of the Quad. In terms of offensive power, US remains to be the most powerful naval power, with the greatest number of assets that can command superiority in naval warfare, such as aircraft carriers, submarines, and destroyers. However, it must be noted that aside from the US, no other Quad country has more naval assets than China, not even India. Based on the official documents from the Quad countries, let us now discuss their threat perceptions of China. In its 2017 National Security Strategy, US underscored China's efforts to displace America in the Indo-Pacific and noted how its military outposts in the South China Sea undermine regional stability. Under the current US administration's interim national security strategic guidance, the China threat to freedom of navigation and overflight was reiterated. It means that under the Biden administration, the US has the same threat perception. In Japan's 2013 National Security Strategy, China's attempts to change the status quo by coercion in the East and South China Sea are also underscored. In a speech in October 2020, current Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga also emphasized Japan's support to the rule of law in the seas and the non-use of force in the South China Sea. Providing a more nuanced threat perception of China, however, Australia's 2017 Foreign Policy White Paper acknowledges the tension brought by China's rise, but nonetheless encourages China to enhance stability and international law. It also seeks to ensure that US and China's economic tensions will not damage the international trading system. In the absence of a published foreign or security policy document, the closest approximation of India's regional strategic assessment is a 2019 report on national strategy commissioned by the Indian Congress. The report notes China's growing assertiveness as a challenge to India, as well as the threat of China's increasing presence in the Indian Ocean, which India holds of great strategic importance. These threat perceptions from the Quad policy documents are consistent with the assessment of CLIEM 2020, who summarized the threat perceptions of the Quad as shown on the slide. Very high for Japan, high for US and India, and medium for Australia. Aside from credibility or the capability and intent to carry out the military threat, another important aspect of deterrence, which reinforces credibility, is communication. The communication must be clear, in such a way that the military threat and the intent to carry it out is not mistaken by the adversary. In this excerpt from the Spirit of the Quad joint statement, we see ineffective communication as far as deterrence is concerned. Although the broad objectives or values had been identified, the statement remains vague as it does not specify the tripwire or red line that must be crossed, which constitutes the adversary action that must be deterred. Likewise, there is no communication of military threat or an intent to carry out a military threat. Based on the same document, we see from this excerpt that there are multiple issues that the Quad seeks to address. This may signal to the adversary a lack of strategic focus or lack of commitment to address maritime security challenges. The indirect reference to maritime domain challenges makes no mention of China's nine-dash-line claim, land reclamations, military facilities, and gray zone coercion, as if not to antagonize China. However, the Quad seems poised to have more military engagements following the reinvitation of Australia to the Malabar exercises in the Indian Ocean. This has been touted by scholars as a missed opportunity for balancing China through Quad military exercises. Based on the foregoing discussion, we can make the following conclusions. The members of the Quad share a common interest as status quo powers. It is on the preservation of the rules-based maritime order. Accordingly, they have expressed their desire to promote freedom of navigation, access to the Indo-Pacific Maritime Commons, unimpeded trade and commerce, rule of law at sea, and peaceful settlement of territorial and maritime disputes. However, as a balancing force against China, the Quad is limited by the different priorities of its members. These differences stem from their different perceptions of China, which influence their interpretations of how a free and open Indo-Pacific order should involve China. Finally, as a deterrent force against China, the Quad is also limited by its informal character. The Quad is not institutionalized as a legal arrangement and does not bind its members in the principle of mutual defense. Hence, it is not inclined to develop a more focused agenda, core objectives, and common strategies which it can communicate to China to deter its assertiveness. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.